look at ethics in general, I say like we're basically a speck of dust on a little pebble floating through space, right? Like nothing we do
Yeah.
actually matters, but we can choose to do the quote unquote right thing or choose to be kind to
Hmm.
that. Once that sense kind of like gets immersed in the business world, like you'll start to CEOs
Hmm.
that will keep the good health plan, and
Hmm.
when everyone's kind of playing by those same rules, like that's when you start
Yeah.
to see like a just a better.
Or if you can get, I think if you could get like basically more CEOs to see that by start seeing employees more as an investment, like, all right, if you keep them healthier, they're going to want to stay longer. You won't have to spend so much time retraining, make them want to work there,
Yeah.
kind of like Google. They're like, yeah, we'll pay you whatever you want. And you can have the best of everything. And their stock, I don't know what it's at, like 2,700 or something.
Yeah.
And so that's like kind of a unicorn situation where that's not the case in everyone. But if that was like the general practice and that was the general result, obviously people would do that because they'd see it as just like, oh, this is how we do well.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a solution to a lot of the world's like issues. Like with climate change, I remember from the time when I was like 10 when they first started talking about it. I would go, once someone figures out a way to take whatever's bad in the air out of the air and make money off of it, we're going to be fine. And I truly believe that once, like, with clean energy, there's some projects that we're looking at that, you're taking oil wells and you're turning like depleted oil wells that are capped, they shoot methane and they're not good. And they're seen as like this scar on the land. Well, you take that, what was formerly like really bad and, carbon emissions, blah, 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 and you can turn it actually into a clean source of energy. You can literally take a depleted well and turn it into a clean source of energy. And I think that's really cool. I'm like, you're taking something that some people view as like evil or whatever, and you're reusing it to help the world.
Yeah.
So like, that's the stuff I see that I go, business can actually bring about really good things. There's something we're working on that restores vision to the blind. So the people that get that really like it. And I see that as good. And I think business, like you said, can be used as a tool for good. It's got a bad rap because when they do mess up, they mess up big.
Yeah, but and I think the other thing there's the ethics problems where people just, you mentioned Enron before and like the whole Arthur Anderson thing, but the other issue is that I think it was like the CEO of Instagram was saying this is like the first time we're seeing a lot of this stuff. Like when they put out social media and they start building algorithms, I'm not referring to the Russia thing, but I'm referring more to the fact that a lot of people look at their feeds and they just get depressed, right? Because they're
Yeah.
like,
Or they
man,
get in like
everyone's
an
on
echo
vacation
chamber.
24/7. Yeah, like they didn't know that was going to happen. They didn't tell the algorithm to build an echo chamber. They said, hey, just keep people on the platform. And then the algorithm happened to find out that the way to do that was to build an echo chamber. But like they just didn't know that prior. Now, when Facebook found out, did they have an opportunity to correct that? Yeah, they did, and they didn't take it. That was an issue. But I think it's also like just we need to be mindful of the fact that we're dealing with a lot of these issues for the first time ever.
And they expect overnight change, which I
Yeah,
don't think is like even possible. You can't, because you have one generation that was literally wired on this algorithm.
yeah,
And if you do
yeah,
change it, number one, there's going to be experimenting because now you got to change it. And if you change it for the worse, then people get off and they go to the guy that said, no, I'm not changing it. I'm leaving it. And then you're out of business. So all that change. Yeah.
yeah,
So there has to be some give and take. Like, look, we're all trying to do something new. And, it was great at first. Like people loved Facebook at first because it was like, oh, you can stay in touch with people more often. You can, and now it's kind of an old hat, people go, oh, that's such a millennial thing.
yeah. It's funny because after when I started my podcast, I didn't even have an Instagram account. In fact, I was trying to get off social, so I think I deactivated my Facebook. But like
Mm-hmm.
you got to do some marketing and all that nonsense. So I started an IG, and now I hardly look at my Facebook. It's more like Instagram gives me the option to post to Facebook. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like even I'm phasing over.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure why, but it is weird those like transitions that happen because it was
Mm-hmm.
such a big thing. And
Oh
when
yeah.
we were growing up, like that was how you stayed connected. The thing I do miss about Facebook too is I don't know if you remember this, but people used to actually post on each other's walls, and it was
Oh
like
yeah.
really entertaining. And then you would see them later, and like, hey, like you post on that person's wall, and it's like this really fun. But now it's like it's just you're being fed content. People aren't really interacting
Yeah.
anymore.
It is interesting. Every once in a while, like a friend or like someone's mom will go back to like one picture from like, I don't know, 2010. and
Yeah.
like post like haha because it knows it'll bring it to the front of everyone's feed.
Yeah.
And so you just see this like person, 11 years, big changes.
Yeah.
What happened to the Mohawk? And that I think is fun, but no one does that anymore.
Become less social, I guess, and more consumer, like,
Kind of like a news feed in a way, but it's
yeah,
a
like,
news feed that is fed to you, I
right,
guess.
right. It's for consumption now, which is interesting because the other thing I've been talking to people about is just finding a creative hobby. And, like, I just think like there's a part of your brain, if you are doing corporate work, it's good to find a creative hobby because there's a part of your brain that doesn't really get nurtured in the same way when you're thinking through
Hmm.
logical stuff. And the other thing corporations bring is, yeah, there are layoffs and stuff, but you get a level of kind of certainty. Like I know as I joined this consulting firm that, I started as senior associate, then you go manager, then you go director. When I was in the medical path, you're pre-med, then you're in med school, then it's residency, then you're a doctor. But when you're doing creative work, it goes back to what you're saying about the dopamine spike when you get your one subscriber. Like
Yeah.
you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. You don't know what's next. You're just creative work is just whatever it is. And sometimes it catches and sometimes it doesn't. I think it,
Hmm.
it just nurtures a side of your brain that you don't see in like your regular day-to-day job.
Oh, 100%. Like, not gonna lie, I didn't know how this was gonna go. You seemed very nice, but I saw you seemed interesting. I'm like, well, hopefully he'll say yes. I don't know how this is gonna go.
Yeah.
And it kind of forces you to get a little bit more creative, step a little bit out of your uh, comfort zone. Because that's one thing that I struggle with a lot is like getting out of my comfort zone because I'm very like, ooh, I'm comfy. I'm gonna stay here.
Yeah.
Um, but then one side of my brain is drawing me to something new, like, oh, that looks cool.
Mhm.
So it's like a really weird push and pull. But podcasting kind of satisfies that. It's I can do stuff I'm comfortable with some days, like just the news or I saw this or answer a question. And then other days when I'm lucky enough to have someone on, and gets really interesting and I'm stepping out, hearing about new things. And I like that. And I agree with you. You do definitely need to nurture that side because there are some days that I go, all right, I just labeled 300 emails. like, like no creativity, not even like logic at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
you just go
clicking.
like, I don't know if that even made like in the grand scheme of things, that literally didn't matter what I just did that I spent like 10 or 12 hours on and put all that work into literally didn't matter.
Yeah.
So I think the creative outlet does help with that. It's like, even if other people don't like it, I feel like I put something into
Yeah. It gives you ownership over something.
it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're starting work again as a consultant for
Mhm.
mergers and acquisition. You
Yeah.
excited about that?
I'm pretty excited actually. It's just I think right now I'm in a very strange place because the last few months I've just focused exclusively on my podcast
Mhm.
and it's done really well. So it's called Brown People We Know and I basically just interview other South Asian Americans that have taken non-traditional paths, right? And the
Mhm.
idea is to dispel external stereotypes. So a lot of people think Indians, Pakistani people, like they're only doctors, they're only lawyers, that kind of stuff, right? So I've had
Mhm.
on like a death metal guitarist that retired and became a dentist. I've had
What?
on a chemical engineer that like ended up becoming a Miss World candidate, and then she like uh, started her own makeup line. Like these really really crazy cool people, right, that are
Mhm.
doing all these things. So I'm like interviewing these people to break the stereotypes, but also because when the kind of the little South Asian community that I did have in Wisconsin, there wasn't much, but the little bit that I did have, all those people went into the sciences and went on to be doctors, right? So I
Mhm.
was getting this kind of community pressure that's sometimes even unintentional because
Mhm.
people are just talking about, oh, look at so and so's kid, they just did this thing or that, you know. So you
Mhm.
hear that, and then it puts a little bit of pressure on you to go down
Do
that path.
something or down that path as well.
Yeah. So I wanted to break that social pressure within the community. And so I have this
Mhm.
podcast and like I said, I've been spending time on it. So like it's been featured in Forbes, it won an award. It's like kind of crazy how it's taken off. But uh I've been so focused on that that part of me is now just like, oh man, like the corporate world. Like
Hmm.
I don't want to stay on this for a little bit. But I think it'll be interesting to try. It'll just be a new, to your point about like getting out of your comfort zone. It'll be a new challenge to try and balance both worlds. And
Mhm.
needing to do that has forced me to think about it differently because now going back to the thing about ownership and starting a creative project and where that can take you, I've now started outsourcing some tasks. I'm paying someone to help me
Mhm.
with editing and these types of things, which is
Mhm.
a year ago when I started, literally there's a closet over there that I was sitting in to start
Mhm,
this podcast, interviewing my friend. Like I didn't expect that I'd have to one day start thinking about,
mhm.
putting together a budget for this and all those
Yeah.
things. But yeah, so I have mixed feelings. The other thing is like, uh, I have this time where I'm training to be a pilot. So like,
Mhm.
on the downside is once I start corporate work, it reduces my amount of time on this creative work. But the upside is I'm training to be a pilot. Hopefully, I'll have my license by then. If I want to go fly a plane, that's not cheap to do. So
No.
this is going to be funding that habit.
Flying a plane, I'm guessing, is not the cheapest hobby you could have picked.
My grandpa, like he's here now because of COVID. COVID in India is really bad, so kind of hanging with us for a little bit. It was really funny because I sat down at the dinner table, just kind of looks at me again, immigrant family, right? He goes,
Mhm.
"How is flying a plane going to help your career?" And I go,
Like I can get the interview quicker.
yeah, I was tempted to be like, well, it's like a networking thing, right? Like you take up a director and next day they make you a director. But I just like I looked him in the eyes and I was like, Grandpa, like, I don't fucking know. I don't think we're at that point
Like
anymore.
the commute's
Like
terrible.
like when you're at the point where you can I don't know, yeah, I'm just like,
You got to have something for fun.
yeah,
It's
I
like,
mean, the joke that I kind of throw out there is, like our family has now moved after the whole immigration thing. Like we've moved from thousands to let's say hundred thousands, and now my job is to get the family from hundred thousands to millions. And like,
mhm.
so the joke that I've been making is like, look, I'm just doing what I see old rich people do. Like if Bezos is flying rockets now, like the least I could do is start with planes, and then
Yeah.
we'll see where we go from there.
Like, I'm not gonna fly a rocket, but I can do like one step below.
Yeah, and then my kids, like, it's on them
Maybe
to
they'll
take
get a
the family
rocket.
to rockets. Yeah.
And by
Uh,
then, who knows what the thing will be then.
yeah. But I
Um,
think it is important because if you just stay in that work mentality, ownership mentality, and like the hobbies have taught me so much, right? Like climbing, you realize you can always go one hold further than you think you
mhm,
can, and so it's built a sort of mental resilience. But then like the podcasting, which again was just a creative outlet for me in the beginning,
mhm,
it's now taught me the value of owning something. And so
mhm,
there's these things, these lessons that I'm getting kind of from quote unquote play that will eventually translate back to my career. But to your point, it's just really like if you're not in that point where you need to be working,
mhm.
there's more to life. Like
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now, I was lucky enough. I took a job in private equity. It's basically a startup because we haven't gotten our fund closed. So the pay is not regular. There's no benefits right now. And but because I was able to do it, it's literally showed me a whole new world that I never would have seen because I would never have gone, yeah, I'll go into investment or I'll go into this. Even though I liked investment, I was like just kind of like, I gotta do something safe, etc. And it showed me a whole new world. I'm like, I can actually do this. And even if it doesn't work out with this company, because I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to stay there, I'd like to be honest, because they've shown me a lot. But at the end of the day, I'm in the position where, yeah, I took basically a year off, but without taking the year to like explore this opportunity, I would have never seen that. Like, oh, I would definitely want to go into this. To your point, having the ability to go and see these things and just do these different opportunities is so valuable. So people should try to take the opportunity and not just stick in that, got to get a job right out of college, got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. Now,
yeah.
student loans make that difficult. I'm not saying it's easy for everyone, but like the whole bet mentality of, all right, now get in and grind for 25 years. That is kind of dead, to be honest, right now. Like people aren't staying in the same job no matter what for 25 years. Normally,
Mhm.
it's just because there's not that much upward mobility in companies because they realize they don't need 30 senior vice presidents, they need three.
Yeah.
And so you get to a certain point and you go, well, I've got the experience, let me go to someplace a little bit smaller that I can get up. And there was some study that was done that like showed that our generation is not staying put anymore. It's like you work at a place for a couple of years, you get some experience, or if you do get moved up, yes, you stay even longer. But like the average, I think it's 5 years now.
Yeah,
And
I mean, for me, it was way shorter. I don't
well,
think
yeah.
I
I
stayed anywhere for more than a year at this point. But uh,
mean, I did 3
yeah,
months at one place and I'm like,
yeah, that was actually the same for me. I had a boss that I hated, and I was living in the suburbs where there was no one above 18 and below like 35, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I used to, you know what I would like come home and I had like a mini charcoal grill and I would
Mhm.
just sit. My balcony was like a cement balcony, so I'd just sit on that and just grill. And then I didn't know what else to do. So after a couple months, I was like, man, I gotta find something else.
See, it's funny you bring that up because where I live right now, I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm on a lake. I'm on a lake, and we have like ATV trails and there's a sandbar and stuff. But during the week, no one.
Yeah.
And because it's on a lake, not most people our age can afford a lake house right now.
Yeah.
It was left to me, and I paid it off. I went into Boston one day. I'm like, oh my god, there's so much to do here.
Yeah, there's people.
Over
It's
here.
weird because I would always think that like in those types of places or periods, like I would be really focused, right? Like there's no
Mhm.
distractions out here. But it's weird. I find that the more I have on my plate, the more focused I become, and so I kind of needed to get back into a place where I had a social life, where I had work, where I had a hobby, and that kind of stuff. And I'm
Mhm.
moving to New York pretty soon, so I'm assuming that I will find other people my age there, hopefully
I don't know.
somewhere in the city, maybe.
Not a lot of people. You're definitely gonna see someone.
Yeah.
If you can't find someone your age in New York, I don't know what you're doing.
It's work from home now, Gerald.
Oh, I forgot about that. Says the guy working from home.
Yeah. No, I'm sure like the climbing gym and between
Mhm.
climbing gym and piloting and all the things I'm doing outside of work, I'll probably find some friends. In fact, New York is the first move I'm making to a big city where I already have friends ahead of time. So some people from
Mhm.
my MBA program are there, and some of the podcast guests are all over there already.
Mhm.
It'll be fun to like,
Cool.
because I don't have to go through that period of like I
Of
just moved
like, I
here.
don't
What do I
know
do?
anyone. Can
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let me just go hang out at a bar and hope I catch something.
Right. I used to volunteer a lot, but like, yeah, I don't know. That can
Yeah.
get kind
It's
of
like I'm volunteering to make friends. That's kind of weird.
yeah. Yeah.
Like,
It works, but it's a slow process.
yeah. And it's
Yeah.
also like, wow, this is a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Maybe
Can't
I
I
should
just
just
take
go
a
back to the
class somewhere
bar.
and meet someone?
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening. Due to editing, we're going to be breaking this interview up into a few segments. So if you enjoyed listening, please stay tuned and have a great day. Bye bye.